all right. What's up, party people in the place to be? This is the second ever episode of Nerds from the Underground. I'm Johnny, and with me is Chris. How you doing, man?
What's good, everybody?
And what do we have on the table tonight, man? I know you're pretty excited about these books.
Right, very excited. So we are talking about Monstress Volume One, very popular book, and we're also talking about Crowded by Christopher Sabella.
Yep. And yeah, let's just get right into it. I got my trade right here, so I'm gonna get into the solicit for Monster and set in an alternate world of Art Deco beauty and steampunk horror. Monstrous tells the epic story of Micah Halfwolf, a teenage survivor of a cataclysmic war between humans and their hated enemies, the Arcanics. In the face of oppression and terrible danger, Micah is both hunter and hunted, searching for answers about her mysterious past as those seek to use her remain just one step behind. And all the while, the monster within begins to awaken.
Yeah, so pretty much I really like Monster. It's got a lot of influences from things that I normally like on their own. Like you could tell that it takes from it's got like a strong manga influence. It's this big fantastical world, but at the same time it's really dark. Like it's a dark kind of fantasy. It's got like all kind of things like that. Yeah, man. So like, I think when you first like pick it up and you hear like it's fantasy, I think some people might be like kind of at first turned off, but once you get into it, it's like some real like hardcore stuff, right? Like from the first page, like she's being sold into like slavery and everything like that, and you don't know what's going on, and as the book as you it kind of unfolds, you kind of figure out like this is her plan from the beginning, and yeah, I like that part. I mean, what'd you think? Like about that, like about it mixing genres and things like that.
Oh, definitely. Like, when I first started seeing stuff for it, it was on the I used to haunt the image webpage all the time. I'd like just I still do. I'd go and see everything they have coming out because they're my
Right.
favorite label. And I remember seeing the cover for issue 2 with the lady with the horse head, and I was just like, dude, that is beautiful. That's amazing. I can't
Right.
wait to check this out. And I went and picked it up, and dude, the first issue of this thing was like 70 pages long. You got a full
Yeah.
graphic novel with the first issue of this book, and I was just so over the moon with that. But like you said, like I was like, okay, so it's a fantasy thing, and then with American fantasy, it's usually a Lord of the Rings ripoff or something
Mm-hmm.
that's really trying to do Game of Thrones ish type stuff. But this, like you said, man, it steps into like Berserk territory. Like
Right.
it's very dark fantasy. It's very I wouldn't say graphic, but it doesn't stray away from showing you some gruesome stuff. Like the Arcanics get um they get taken and sold, and then they get operated on by the warrior nuns, and
Yeah.
that they completely get dismembered. And you straight up see like this lady holding this little cyclop kid's head, and then like
Yeah.
hooking it up to some machine and like electrocuting, and you're just like, I didn't expect that from an American comic. That's like some straight up manga or Euro stuff. So that, yeah,
Right.
100%. Like that, I'm totally feeling that. It hit me on like a Berserk level. Of course, it's not as sexually graphic as Berserk is, but it's definitely got the darkness and the grittiness.
I mean, and it even reminded me of like even more like kind of well known manga. Like for instance, like even though this isn't the only one to do it, but like if you go back to Naruto, like having this big kind of fox demon within him, and him not really knowing like the power that he has yet, but yet it resides and it like kind of helps him whenever he's in trouble. Like that it reminded me of that, because whenever she's in trouble, that what do they call the monstrums or
Yeah, the
whatever.
Monstorum, I think is how it's how I pronounced it, Monstorum. But yeah,
Yeah,
Monstrum, yeah.
like the one that's inside of her comes out and kind of helps her, and definitely gave me those like kind of nine tail fox vibes, and that was dope. And yeah, like this like even cannibalism almost, right? Like cuz the what's her name? Yvette, is that the one
Yeah,
that knew her?
Yvette, the one that's is at first doing all the experiments and the torture. Yeah,
And
but
she's like eating the organs, right? Like the livers.
Well, no, what they do is they never said how, but like they take what's from the Arcanics, and they make that stuff that they drink that's
Right.
kind of like a drug that like fixes them. But there's
Now,
one scene where they kind of do talk about cannibalism, where Micah herself, she's talking
yeah,
about when she was a slave, and like she didn't eat the guts, but she ate what was
right.
inside the guts of another
No,
kid that
but
was in the camp with her.
nah, yeah, exactly. She's like that. They had to like eat whatever was inside of someone else's stomach to eat, which is a crazy image. But
Yeah.
you remember in the first issue, like right after that when they had the Cyclops head and they killed it, and she's like, bring these to my mom while they're still kind of, what was it, warm or something like that, or she's gonna complain. You
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah, yeah. I totally remember that.
and then like the mom had that kid locked up. The kid, remember?
Oh, that's right. I
And
forgot all about the
and
kid with no hands. Yeah,
yeah,
she was
and
like
he was
snacking on him.
yeah, he's all like, please don't eat me again. Don't eat any more of me. I'll be good. And she's like, stop complaining. And I'm like, whoa, like that. I did. It took a turn, and I was like, but it's kind of in a weird way, like you said, a breath of fresh air because you don't get the same kind of tropes. Even the different races or whatever you want to call them, species, they're different, right? You don't get like the orcs and the trolls and the this, like they're all very unique, down like the cats and the different kind
Yeah,
of gods.
yeah.
Yeah,
The Arcanics are totally neat because they're some of them are almost human except for a couple animal-like features, and then you have the one queen chick who's basically like a human
right.
dog.
Yep.
So like they have all different kinds of variations too. You have the dude with the wings who he has like half of his face covered, so I'm assuming probably part of his face is animalistic, but yeah, like they totally. I think it's because we had two Asian creators on this book that we kind of got something that's a little more Eastern than what you'd normally get out of an American or European fantasy book, which would be orcs and dwarves and elves and stuff. And yeah, these two ladies, they just completely went insane. Like this is the book when I scoff when people say that, like, oh, you're gonna let girls do comics, they're just gonna make it as girly as possible. I'm like, dude, read Monstress. Like in the first issue, there's this scene where the ugly guard is telling her that she's gonna rape her with the
Yeah,
cattle prod, and
with the baton.
you're just like, what?
Yeah,
Ew, that's so brutal. You know what I mean?
crazy imagery. Yeah,
So it's like I totally don't get how some people can say that type of stuff when there's a book like this out there, and the fact that like. You look at both these young women; they're both gorgeous, and like, and then they, oh man, they turn around and just put out a book that is it's beautiful but shocking at the same time. I mean, the art is just gorgeous, but then you'll look at some panels and you'll see what's going on in them, and you're just like, "Ow,
yeah,
ow, dude, that's that's not right." So it's pretty cool. It's pretty different than what most people would probably be used to when you say like, "Oh, it's a new fantasy book,"
right. And like it's not even, and the best part about it is that they don't just use it for shock value. There's actually pretty serious themes going on, right? Like you get that she's dealing with like PTSD from her past and stuff like that, and it seems like she is somehow responsible for that weapon of mass destruction or whatever happened that day that killed all those people.
Yeah,
Like,
well, you slowly get to learn in this book that yeah, whatever the monstorm in her, it woke up for just a second on the battlefield of Constantine, and it murdered
right,
everything in like 10 miles around. You know what I mean? And except for some people that were around, and some of them are blind, some of them are burnt, but some are
right.
untouched too, which is it's just an interesting concept. Like,
So
and
like, right, exactly, and like pretty much like that makes you think of like when you talk about the Asian influences and things like that. It takes you back to like like the end of World War II, like with the atom bombs dropping. Like those are the kind, like the things that they were saying about that event, like made me think of that. Like, you know what I mean?
oh, that's a total another thing about this book that I find completely beautiful is um they they um they show kind of how communities are at war, and neither the Arcania or the what are they, the archaics or the humans, they're both pretty violent in their own way. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
shows, how war is. There's not one good side, one bad side. They're both messed up. They both want to get a hold of this girl and what she has to use for their own ends, which you
Right.
kind of find out while reading this book. And that's kind of something that you get touched on with certain things. Like Lord of the Rings was supposedly about World War II, but I didn't get as hard of a feeling about that as I do with this, and with the religious wars we have going on in the world right now. I couldn't help but draw the parallel between the warrior nuns being kind of like a Christian type thing, and the archaics almost kind of being like an Eastern religion that we're constantly at conflict with right now. And that kind of hit me in a really neat way, that I thought that this book took a really neat turn, which
Right.
made it even a little more profound, in my opinion.
No, yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely got like so much nuances and undertones to it. It's not your typical fantasy, and I really appreciate that. And then on top of that, like I said, a lot of some of these panels, you would look at them, and if you took out the color and made it black and white, you would think this belongs in a manga. You know what I mean? Like some of just like the craziness going on, like um and I looked it up, and the artist said that she was heavily inspired by those kinds of things, like that genre, and you could totally see it, like
Yeah,
yeah,
without totally jumping in or ripping it off. It's kind of like they borrow from it, but they keep it kind of how it should be in an American comic.
yeah,
Like you have the cute little girl character with the foxtail that kind of keeps everything normalized, kind of keeps everything calm for the most part in the book. But she's not written like how she would be in a manga, where she'd kind of be over the top and annoying.
right.
In this, she's kind of scared all the time, but she's brave at the same time. And
She's a
like
really
her and
good
the
character.
yeah, like she kind of really helps keep you focused through the book. Because if you just followed Micah, the book would be chaos. Like if you didn't have the little fox character and the cat, like yeah, like the book would be even more insane. So they're like are kind of our guides, and they kind of keep us calm while all this stuff is happening. And like a lot happens in this book. I'm very impressed with just how big this first trade paperback
Yeah,
is for a 9.99.
you get your money's worth.
You get over your money's worth, because like I said, the first issue is 70 pages, and then you get four more issues in this book. And man, you take a journey and a half in this. And it's just the beginning. There are three more trades after this, and
Right.
it's going to keep going after then. So
It ends with a crazy twist, right? Like I didn't see that coming. When I first read it, I didn't see that coming. That last kind of
yeah, the
panel
last
with the reveal, the big reveal on who that girl was.
right. Oh, and also when you get to find out about the Mother Superior of the Warrior Nuns, and that she's not who everybody thinks
Right.
that she is, and she's part of the bigger picture. When you kind of thought that she was just some hungry capitalist, you know what I mean? And you find out that like, ooh, no, she's actually way more involved than you think she would
Mm-hmm.
ever be. And yeah, I mean, like this thing has like a end of the game boss battle at the end of the first trade, which is just amazing for a comic starting out. And it's not like it's like, hey, we're going to take a backseat after this. I'm not going to go into the next couple trades, but for the people that are listening that haven't read on yet, it doesn't slow down. It gets more badass and more
Yeah.
involved as it goes along. So just tie in and just enjoy the ride for this one, because Monstress is so good.
Yeah. I really liked it, man. Like you remember that part with the and it's got some jokes too. You remember when the cat was like egging on the two dogs, what he was saying.
Yeah, straight up. Well, well, that and you get between the issues, you get the little breakdown with the one cat teaching you lessons about the cat magic. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's some nice little breaks. It doesn't stay hardcore the whole time, which is nice too. You get some kind of really nice characters, like the lady with the kid that helps them escape
Yeah.
initially. And some of these people, they get away. They don't all get tortured and murdered like in some other stories. Like basically, if you were reading Berserk, like all those characters would be
Mm-hmm.
chopped up. But like not here. You kind of do get nice little breaks,
Yeah.
which is kind of nice for a book that gets this heavy.
You get some hero moments, right? Like
Straight up, yeah.
yeah, man, you get some hero moments, and it's really nice. And the world is definitely fully realized. Like you can tell off the bat that they have something planned because, like you said, those things in the back of each issue that kind of talks about like the history behind it. You can tell that like it's well planned out. You know, that they've got a lot of story to tell. A lot of things are connected, and usually those little bits of information like prove to be
Oh
helpful.
yeah.
Like later on down the line, you know, like oh, I remember they mentioned that. You know.
Well, and then that's definitely another thing that they kind of borrowed from manga and anime because like that if you read like Dorohedoro and some of the books where they you
Yep.
kind of at first think that these are just like weird little add-on stories, but then when you start reading them and paying attention to later events, you're kind of like, oh, I see, well played. So yeah, like you get a lot of really good information, and also like just the character roster of this book. There's just so many
Yeah.
integral characters that are moving around. So yeah, they had to have, like at least put I don't know maybe a good year and a half thinking about at least this first arc and how it was all going to go together because there's no way this book was put together in like a normal time because there's just too many characters, too many moving parts. It's just one big beautiful moving piece that just clicks really well together and leads to other magnificent adventures. Like I just got book 4. I haven't read it yet, but I'm dying to. This is like
Yeah.
in my top 5 favorite books that are running right now. So yeah, like Monstrous. I would just look at Sana Takada's art, man. Like just look at any of the covers of this book, and you're not intrigued to read this. I think that there's might be something a little wrong with you. You know what I mean? Honestly.
Yeah. And it's unique, man. It's like I don't know what I haven't seen anything like that. You know, it's hard to compare. It looks almost like a painting. Like it's
The closest I've seen is some European books, but those really will go for some pastels or some bright colors in there.
right.
Whereas she's got all the black and gold, there would be some purples and shit, like if it was
Mm-hmm.
a Euro book. But she keeps it Asian, and that's the thing is like it blends like a lot of different really amazing styles of comics from around the world, and I think that that's just its total winning element is that it adapts from all, it takes all the best parts of all, and it completely made its own thing, which is utterly beautiful because I'm a huge fan of world comics. I haven't
Right.
read as much manga as probably you have, but I'm really getting invested into it, and but I love European books, and this one it has several elements, but it doesn't go too far into them. But it definitely subverts anything you'd expect from your average American fantasy book. Usually, you
Yeah.
just get basically a Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones jock, which
Yeah.
this is nowhere near either of those. I mean,
No, it's completely its own thing. And like one thing about the art too that I really like are those when you get those parts where the monstrum show up. You know those things that people say are just mindless, that they're ghosts or whatever. Just these big, like giant, just
yeah, yeah.
gawking things, and it's just like whoa, like you just stop there at that page, and usually just the backgrounds are so good, and you just see this big giant creature just staring down at them.
Looking like nothing you've ever
Yeah,
seen in any book before. Like they got all these eyeballs and like oh yeah, no, just the monster designs are incredible. Even when at the beginning of the book when she's first kind of seeing the thing that's inside of her and it's kind of chasing her at first, but you don't know that she's the only one seeing it. Like when
right.
you first just see those first glimpses of it's incredible. And even when it's inside her head talking to her in like the pyramid type thing where like
Mm-hmm.
it's talking to the statue. Oh dude, like yeah, dude, the monster designs are incredible. uh all the art's just beautiful, honestly. I mean, end of story. But the
Yeah.
monster designs are, I can't say I've ever seen anything like them. And I've read comics from all over the place. I've read Korean, European, Russian, and I've never seen monsters that look like the ones in this. And I've read all kinds of kaiju stuff from Japan. And
Right.
yeah, this is just
And then
glorious.
the neat thing about like when you get the trade and everything is like you get sketches in the bag too. You get to see like some of this process, you know, like you see some of the artists like character designs and things like that. I don't know, was that in your edition of your trade?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, in the first one, we kind of get you get. No, not really. We get a map and
You know what I
but
think?
I have the single issues for the first couple issues,
Okay.
and yeah, like in the back of those, there was a lot of really neat stuff. Like you get you I remember just like all these really cool sketches of like the eyeball with like all this stuff coming off of it, and then there was a really neat um kind of cast picture that Sana Takada drew of like all the people from the first issue
Yeah,
and
yeah,
kind of just in a portrait together, which I thought was amazing because it's like, wow, dude, some of these people only showed up for a panel, but like they included everybody that showed up. I thought that that was like one of the neatest kind of little things, and it was fully rendered, fully colored, just a beautiful piece of art,
yeah, dude.
which most people wouldn't even, why would I want to draw all these characters that barely showed up in
Yeah.
my book?
You get like I'm saying, like this is well worth your money. Like I don't know, you said it's 9.99. I got my copy at Barnes and Noble, so maybe and it said it was a Barnes and Noble exclusive edition, and it had some of those sketches in it, and I think that was probably around the same price. But I'm saying if you spend 9.99 on this book, I think you're gonna be happy with it. You're gonna want to get volume two for sure. Because even if you don't like the story or anything like that, like you said, if you look at the art, and you're not intrigued, then I don't know. Like,
Well, I mean, I look at it like this: like you go and you look at either any book from Big Two that's out. It's 4 issues long. You know what I mean? It's a trade. They want 18.99 for it.
yeah,
It's 4 issues long. It's got some glossy, but it's what I mean. It's just going to be a run of the mill,
yeah.
by the numbers hero fluff book. This is $10, and it comes with a 70-page first issue, and then five more issues in it. It's got some of the most glorious art you've ever seen in it. And even if you're not a fan of fantasy, as you think, as you've probably seen in like modern films and stuff, still give this a look. This is not going to be like anything you've seen in Harry Potter or even most of the anime that me and you have kind of compared it to. It's nothing like it.
Yeah.
This is kind of 100% its own product. There's really nothing else quite like Monstrous that in comics, literature that I've read, which I'm not the biggest fan, but like I do read some fantasy literature. Usually comics are better, but yeah, and I have not ran across anything as creative, beautiful, and just gut punching. I mean, like we talked about earlier, there's so many nuances. There's just so much going on. Like they've worked in several delicate things into this really neat parable that honestly I don't understand why $10 would be too much for to ask
Right.
anybody to pay to give this just a look at least.
Is this something that you would want to see adapted?
Would I like to see this adapted? Definitely not for live action. Maybe if they get like one of those really, really good CGI studios to work on it, like the people that did. Uh, no, actually, I don't see this making a screen a
Hmm.
jump to the screen looking good anytime soon, man. Like I was trying to think of a way, and like even with the best CGI art houses, I don't think it would come out looking anywhere near as good as the book
Right.
does. So even animated, I wouldn't really want to see this
And
adapted
it's
right now.
it's kind of crazy too because in this first a large part of this first volume takes place in that city, right? And it's very steampunk. Like even though it's fantasy, it's very like it's kind of got its sci-fi elements, right? Like there's pictures, people taking pictures, right? Like there's all types of steam and like kind of things like that. But at the same time, there's like horse and carriage. So it's like this blend that I really like. It's so unique.
Yeah, it's at some points it's almost medieval, but then like yeah, they're able to take photographs and write on photographs, and that they have semi-modern guns. They have kind of muskety type guns. So yeah, I'd say probably around turn of the 20th century type technology at its best. But then you ride about 5 minutes out away from that city, and you're basically in King Arthur land. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is pretty neat. It kind of reminds me of another image book I like that never gets enough play called Carbon Gray. It was also another kind of, I guess you could call it fantasy, as fantasy action, but it blended Germanic history and lore with kind of like a somewhere it looked like World War I because there were biplanes and blimps everywhere, but they were running around. They had modern guns. They had like M4s and HKs and stuff. it was
Oh
just
man.
another book with just a really beautiful art. So if you're interested in this and you want to see kind of time blending, wonderful fantasy action, like give Carbon Gray a check too. Like there's three trades for that. I think there's an omnibus for it too. Really worth your time. Really different kind of comic, way off on its own, like Monstress is.
Okay. No doubt. Yeah, like definitely go out get Monstress if you get the chance. If you're looking for some good fantasy or just something different, it's worth your time.
Right on. You ready to get into some Christopher Sabella?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Next up, 10 minutes in the future. The world runs on the economy of job shares and apps like Reaper, a crowdfunding platform for assassinations. When the seemingly normal Charlie Ellison wakes up one morning to a $1 million campaign on her head, she hires Vita Slatter, the lowest rated bodyguard on the Defend app. As the campaign grows and all of Los Angeles is out gunning for them, Charlie and Vita have to figure out who wants Charlie dead and why before the campaign's 30 days or their lives are over.
So this is a book that I've raved about on podcasts before, on mostly Street Level Floppies. I think we probably reviewed it like every time it came out, like a new issue, like probably the whole first trade, but like individually. And I don't think I've ever given a single issue anything less than a perfect score. Like that's how much I liked it. Um, so this one is like I would say probably it's in the future. It takes place in the future, but like the near future, right? Like, and something I really liked about it is that it kind of plays with, it kind of takes to the extreme a lot of the fears or predictions that people have of how social media and these things are gonna affect us, and it just kind of takes it to the like 10th level, and I really like that. So like, because we have things like that that already exist, the crowdsourcing and the like the sharing apps and things like that. So this kind of realizes a world of what if like you could literally do anything through these programs, or this is how you go about your daily life. The first issue especially does a great job at kind of showing like how this world works. Like if you need to get some clothes, you won't go to the store and buy them. You'll borrow it and bring it back. If you need a car for a day, you'll borrow it, bring it back. And I really kind of think that's very unique because I haven't seen anything like that.
Right, it kind of plays off of things that we have now, but exaggerated. Kind of like how like there's that Postmates shit where you can have somebody buy your food from McDonald's and bring it to you, so you don't even have to go out and
Right,
go to McDonald's by yourself anymore. And it kind of with the Reaper thing, I think it kind of is playing off of that urban legend about the online hitman on the dark web, which it's kind of a neat way to take it. Plus the whole spoof on over the top fake people on YouTube type
right,
characters
exactly.
like the guy that comes after her. I thought that was great, like total spoof on like the Jake Pauls type guys out
Yep,
there.
yep.
And like you said, man, like I've been a huge fan of Christopher Sabella. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. I found a book called Dead Letters. It was by Boom. It's this moody, a bluesy noir book. I never heard of the kid writing it before, but I was utterly blown away. Then I read Welcome Back and so far and so on, and I've read everything that this guy's done so far. But Crowded has to be the single funnest thing he's ever done. I mean, this book is just a total blast, and you get launched right into it. I have a hard time liking Charlie herself, but I utterly adore Vita. Like I
Right,
read this book for her. She is just this warrior goddess with the tie and the cool hairdo, and like she puts up with so much crap and she's just so calm the entire time that you can't help but just think that like dude she's like the sexy Terminator or something, man. There's
yeah.
something going on with this broad. She is just badass, and the art is just so. It's a lot different than like Monstress, the book we just covered, but it's also just it's on its own level of just being that good. It's so clean and it's almost cartoonish, but it also at the same time is cartoonish enough to perfectly encapsulate the type of feel and story that they were going for. Because it's like you said, it's a very exaggerated take on very real things right now. And there's been a few books like this that have really took me by storm, like Friendo, and then Number One with the Bullet from last year, like books that really take this idea of social media and webcams and phone cams and people taking pictures of you when you don't want them to, and all this scary
Right.
shit that's actually really happening. And it tells you these terrifying stories in a very fun and funny way at the same time. That you don't know if you're supposed to be creeped out, laughing, or enjoying yourself. And I don't know. I just can't help but kick my feet up and just be like, I'll worry about that shit tomorrow. I'm enjoying my book.
No, yeah, like it's really like kind of takes you by surprise, right? Because these changes kind of in real life happen very gradually until the point where you don't recognize it anymore. Like next, like one day it's one thing and the next day it's a totally another thing, taking it to an extreme. And that's really good. Like, and like you said, like that was very interesting too. Like the kind of villain towards the end of this volume, the guy, the YouTuber, right, who's pretty much clout chasing for the most part, right? Like
Yeah.
he's a very different guy when the camera's not on than when it is. And like you kind of get like into like his backstory, like kind of how he started and everything like that, where he came from. It kind of touches on that, right? And you kind of get that sense, and that's something that's consistent, I think, in Sabella's books, is that there are very intense moments, like very heart-filled moments where you can feel what the character's kind of going through. Like I don't know, you've read everything he wrote, so you read Shanghai Red, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
And
that one is hardcore. That's
yeah, like that's one where like with the characters, like you kind of, especially the main character, you really feel what they're going through. You know what I mean? And
right.
so even the kind of, I guess you could call him a villain. I don't know if he's a villain or not, but he's the antagonist of this story at least, and you
Right.
kind of
And
feel for him
he's
too.
kind of yeah, yeah, you kind of especially when I don't know, feel for him, but like you kind of understand where he's coming from, and you
Mm-hmm.
just get that he's kind of just a dingleberry. You know, he's not an evil person. He's not a bad person. He's just this guy that's hyped himself up, and he's made a little bit of clout doing this. So everything that he does now, he's trapped in this circle. So you almost feel bad for him, but then you get to the point where he sets up what he sets up, and you don't actually feel too bad for him
Yeah, yeah,
once Vita gets her hands on him and does what she does to him. But
and
still, yeah.
and like you said, like Charlie, even though I don't think we're supposed to like her, but I can't help but like her, and I think that's like the same thing that kind of Vita goes through, like
Well, the thing about her, Charlie is, you know, she knows more about what's going on than what she ever tells anybody.
no
And
responsibility.
Sabella, you know that he's doing it on purpose because the guy always puts so much to read in his books. He's one of the most wordy guys working. That's why I love him so much. He always gives you nice little hints and all kinds of stuff in like the all the different dialogue boxes and feeling boxes that you get, but he never gives you one hint of what Charlie actually knows about what's going on. So you know when that fucking bomb drops on you, it's going to be hardcore, and you know that like Vita's going to have to deal with
Yeah.
some serious stuff
Yep.
when you find out exactly what's up with Charlie, what she did, and how she knows what she knows. But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
maybe it's not going to be that big of a deal when it hits. You know, that's the cool thing about books like this because Sabella's playing this one more wild and fun than he usually does. Because usually his books are pretty hardcore. You've read like you said Shanghai Red. I'm assuming you've read High Crimes and his really gut punchy
And the
books.
new one,
So
Test, right?
well, Test is kind of in between here and like maybe something like Dead Letters. It's definitely harder, but it's not as hardcore as like say like High Crimes or Shanghai Red
Yeah.
was. And yeah, I think that this is just going to it's going to hit hard when you finally find out what's up because I think Charlie acts a little too stupid for the situation. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like she kind of goes out of her way to make things worse, and you're just kind of like nobody's that oblivious. Nobody's that cutesy dumb.
Right.
Nobody. you know. And
That's
she's got Vita trick because Vita's kind of got the hots for her. They kind of showed that in one of the
hmm
later issues that she almost put the moves on her. So you're like, oh girl, don't fall
she's
for it,
feeding into
man.
it too. She's feeding into it too. Like
Yeah.
one of the best scenes I think in volume one is, do you remember when I think they were like on the news like interviewing people who knew Charlie, and they
Oh
were
yeah.
all like just talking so much shit about her, and she had to sit there and listen, and like how she reacted, like that was like kind of like the first hint, like man, like she really, like you starting to get like what her personality is like, you know, that it's starting to seem like she's very selfish.
She's got to be kind of a sociopath. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like there's no doubt about it. There's a disconnect in her head where if it's not about her, it doesn't it doesn't necessarily matter. You know what I mean? It's go ahead and cut that off. I stole it. She stole the dog, and she doesn't even care about it. But you know what I mean. Vita
right,
has to take care of it, but like she stole this dog. She's a very weird, complicated character, and like I said, like she's very easy to dislike, but at the same time, like you said, you gotta kind of enjoy her too because she's just I don't know, kind of definitely the biggest part of the story. And Sabella's just too good to write something that's just obligatorily hateful and awful. You know what I mean?
right.
He's not at that point in his career yet. I think he's got a couple more years before he gets that that dissatisfied.
Yeah, but she's a good character, you know, because she like when you're done with it, you're thinking about it, like, man, like what did she do? Why does she act like this? This and it's very like I like the characterization. Like you said, someone who's usually the center of a plot or who's driving the plot normally doesn't act that way in a story, right? Like we've had flawed characters before, don't get me wrong, but she is very frustratingly flawed, right? Like if it was just her and there was no Vita, I don't know if I'd be able to like continue reading the book because I'd be so upset. You
Right.
know what I mean? Because she's just like blatantly manipulative of people and acts like she's not doing it. And it's just like, man, that's kind of some of the worst people in the world that you could be acquainted with. And so yeah, so it's definitely gonna be a reason for that, but it's definitely a good character, you know.
Well, she's got some good moments too, like the part where she's in the bathroom and like the bride
Mm-hmm.
hit woman, and she talks her down, and the two of them, like they settle amicably. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it doesn't get violent, and so
That's true.
she's got a personality. She's got like or she can at least pretend to be a caring, compassionate person, which is either going to be even more heartbreaking when the truth finally hits, or maybe she's just is as Mr. Bean stupid as she pretends to be. You can't really tell right now, but judging how Sabella usually writes, I doubt it. You know what I mean? I don't see him like just having a completely mindless character in one of his books.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. He writes with purpose, and yeah, you know, we're gonna see towards the end of the book where this is all headed. But overall, it's definitely, I think, worth the price of admission. And I think it's being optioned into a movie as well. There's an actress who picked up the rights to
Yeah,
it, and she's gonna turn it into a movie, and she's starring, I think, as Charlie.
yeah. It's man, I forget her name. She was the chick from the she's the big girl from the singing movies. I
Yeah,
forget
I
what
think
those are
the
called.
hairspray.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. They better get somebody awesome to play Vita. That's all I care about, man. Like they better get some hardcore. Like I'm thinking like Ruby Rose maybe to play Vita.
Hey,
Ruby would be good.
yeah, I can see that.
And and the first trade it's $13. This is like $6, $8 cheaper than what you're gonna pay for a DC or Marvel book, and it's so much better. You're gonna get so much entertainment out of it. And like I said, Sabella puts so much to read in all of his books, and it never gets boring. He's so good at being wordy that it's not even funny. So like. if you haven't read Crowded, I can't put a hard enough sell on it. Like Chris said, he gives it near perfect scores every issue, and I gotta agree with that. Like I love everything Christopher Savella's done. He has not written a book I haven't loved yet, and Crowded may not be my favorite, but it's definitely his most entertaining and fun book he has ever done. So honestly, hop on that, have a good time with it. You're welcome.
Most definitely.
And that's pretty much it,
Yeah.
man. Like that was episode 2 of Nerds from the Underground, and I had a total ball. This is really cool. I'm glad that we got to catch up and do an episode together. I'm kind of hoping to collect the whole cast at some point, but yeah, like well, Fred and Andrew got some stuff going on, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
I
no, for
think me and
sure.
you we're going to be holding this down for a couple weeks, so and I think we got a good click going. So if you guys enjoyed this, we got another one coming in a couple days. We're going to be talking about a few books we haven't figured out yet, but we'll get back to you on Twitter about that. And check us out on the STV Floppy server. Right on.
Peace.
Yeah!